Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. This episode reminds me of a wow moment I had about 15 years or so ago when I went to a new primary care physician because I had moved to a new city. The doctor walks in and he's got a tablet in his hands. You know, one of those ones that reversed. It was a laptop, then it was a tablet. It was a Windows machine. Remember, it's 15 years ago. But what was the wow thing for me was I noticed as he's asking me questions about the symptoms I was experiencing, he's tapping on the tablet. Like basically, he's checking things off on a list. And what ended up happening was instead of him relying on all the information he has in his brain, going back to medical school and the patients he's seen, he's tapping into real-time information from the entire world of the medical establishment and medical science. He's getting real-time answers and what to ask next. What could this be? And then what's the best course of action for the patient based on the questions and the things you've entered, right? He's not just relying on what's upstairs. And this week's guest on the show reminds me of that doctor and that moment of wow I had. His name is Michael Lor, and he's a practicing financial advisor and the co-founder of FP Pathfinder with Michael Kitces. The FP Pathfinder solution is, well, something that was born out of the need for financial advisors to ask the right questions at the right time and have real-time checklists to ensure that clients are given the most effective advice at the right time. Let's face it, even if you have a CFP like Michael, you aren't always going to have all the answers in your head. And frankly, things change all the time. Tax code, anyone? Anyway, so why not have all the updated guides to help you to do your best? Okay, enough of my intro. Hopefully I've built it up enough. You're going to absolutely love this episode of the show. So let's get to the conversation with Michael Lor. Well, Michael Lor, welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. Great to see you today, buddy.
Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. I'm really thrilled that we got put together. So, it's always fun when you're like, I have never heard of this company. Sounds awesome. Concepts that you're working on is really interesting and definitely beneficial to the audience. And I'm so thrilled that somebody introduced us. This is awesome stuff.
Yeah, no, this is great. I'm excited to dig in.
I got to tell you, I am a little apprehensive, and it has nothing to do with like being like really nervous. It's just, you're probably going to touch on some things that like I'm not necessarily particularly good at. And we were talking a lot about like processes and systems and so forth today. Anybody who knows me knows that Mike is not the type of guy who's like working off checklists all the time. Like I can handle systems, but I rely on other people to do more of the system stuff because I'm not that guy. So I'm really excited about this, but also a little nervous. I'm about to have like a little shame thrown my way.
Yeah. All right. I'll keep it to a minimum then.
All right. So as I just teed up, we're going to be talking a lot about systems and processes for not only for the financial advisor success, but as I have been digging into things on your website and so forth, this is going to ensure the client's success as well. So let's kick off the conversation by diving into the origin of your firm, FP Pathfinder, because I think it's pretty illustrative of the challenge that many financial advisors have when it comes to maximizing the effectiveness of their financial advisory business.
Yeah. So I am a financial advisor, and I still meet with clients now. But you go back like eight years ago, 10 years ago, when I started to get into the business, I had this problem that kept eating at me. And it's silly, really, when you think about it. But clients would call up and they say, "Hey, can I make a contribution to my Roth IRA?" Can I make a deductible IRA contribution? And I got it wrong almost every time. Like I wouldn't ask the right questions at the right time. And then I'd get off the phone and I'd say, "Wait a minute. Yeah, they can't, but their wife can, or because of how things are set up, like he's not contributing to a retirement plan, so actually he can." And so I felt like I wasn't providing the right experience for my client when I would have to call back and say, "Hey, I forgot to ask you this question," or "I actually had to think about it a little bit more." And so out of frustration, I made a little flowchart to help me just navigate that one question that would come up. And so I started to use it, and then I started to show it to other advisors. They liked it, and then I started sending it out to
Yeah.
bloggers out there, and just say, hey, maybe you find this to be interesting to send off to other advisors that are reading your stuff. And a couple picked it up. More advisors started to want to see what I was putting together, because now I'm developing flowcharts on Social Security decisions. And what are the questions you have to ask over there? And it led to Michael
Okay.
Kitces, and and he said, I've been kind of thinking about a business along the lines of
Hmm.
checklists, and you've got this thing you're working on with flowcharts. You want to experiment and put something together. And so it's like, okay, it's Michael Kitces. Like, I'm sure. Where
Right,
where do we
right,
go
right.
with that? So we ended up coming up with a little pilot project. We launched FP Pathfinder. It was really very much on a shoestring kind of budget, and turns out advisors found a lot of value in having, uh, in essence, having conversations that they're having with clients boiled down to, whether it's a conversation script, it's a tool that you use just on the back end, something to help the advisor have a better conversation with their client. And that's where we really honed in on.
That's it's fascinating. I like the fact that you had that, it just came out of your own pain point, because very often that's a common founder story, right? That uh I was tinkering around with this stuff. I had this problem over and over and over again, and I developed a solution just to solve my own pain point. And then I realized there's almost certainly other people who have the same thing. And then you just started kind of socializing the idea. So one of the greatest ways to start a business, right, is like solve your own problem first, especially if it's one that's of value to you. You can go bring that to others. Uh, why is it? I think I know the answer to this, but why is it that you feel like there's a need for like flowcharts and checklists? I mean, you answered it for yourself, but is it just the complexity of this business? I mean, that really just makes it a necessary evil, if you want to call it that. Like, look, man, this is there's too many
Yeah.
buttons on this plane to fly without.
Well, right. Okay, that's interesting. There's a couple of ways to tease that out. There's a group of advisors out there where they're saying it's just so complex. There's all these rules, and once I get it figured out, like the annual limits change. Now I can't remember the numbers, and then Secure Act comes out. Now the conversation on estate planning changes, and then Secure Act 2.0 comes out. Like whatever CARES Act, whatever legislation, like it's always like you're always trying to digest all of the planning issues. So for some people, they just want like a couple of guides to help them as like a resource. It's a tool. It's a support system for them. But then what we found, and this is kind of as the business has evolved, uh, a group came and they're going, actually, we want to put this in front of clients. We want to walk through this together. We want to have we want to uncover these planning
Mm,
conversations and these issues to talk about together. So they're taking the checklists and the flowcharts and they're showing it to the client, saying, "Hey, you're going through a retirement. Let's let's go through that retirement together. Here is a list of 30 planning issues that we're going to go through. Let's start to figure out what do we have to cover before we can actually say you've got our blessing
yeah.
for retirement." And so now in this case, this is helping the advisor create the agenda. What are we actually going to talk about in those
Hmm.
planning meetings? And and then there's this third aspect where we're seeing a lot of growth where they're saying, look, we actually want to systematize this stuff even more, like systematize how we have these conversations, systematize how we uncover this with our clients. And here, this is where it gets more into like the advisor is sending a link to the client saying, hey, before we meet, go ahead, check these boxes, like go through
Yeah.
this checklist. And then when the client fills that out and it comes back to the advisor, now the advisor's walking into the meeting not trying to uncover things. They've already uncovered everything. Now they're going in saying, we're going to solve this stuff. I've already done the research. I put together some plans. Let's talk about the issues we uncovered already.
Yeah, I love that so much. It's great. It's like instead of coming in to the meeting and going, okay, so what's on your mind? Here's what's happened since the last time we talked. Here's where the markets are. Here's what here's how your money's grown or not grown or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
It's saying, hey, let's have a vibrant conversation when you come in here. And it's funny. This reminds me of something you and I talked about during our prep call. You mentioned that part of the inspiration for the checklists came from the checklists that doctors follow to avoid complications. And I'm reminded of my
right.
own health journey because I go to a cardiologist. I'm at that age now where they say you should go see your cardiologist. And every time before I go to see him, something very similar to what you just described happens. I get an email that says, okay, here's what life has been so far since we started testing and all the stuff that you do on your for your cardiac health. Oh, yeah, that sounds about right. Anyways, for your heart health,
Yeah, that sounds
you know, and
works
exactly,
for
and then
for
and
us.
then there is a series of kind of like checklists to go through, like of asking questions, like, hey, answer this questionnaire, like any medicines have changed, any behavioral changes, all this type of stuff, anything you're concerned about, blah blah blah, so that when I go into the doctor's office, the conversation can start with that. And then here's a little funny thing, and maybe this is part of the journey you're doing as well. He asked me to kind of recite back to him a little bit like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, why are we trying to do the things we're doing? And how do we get here? And then what are we trying to accomplish in the future? I think it's really interesting. I guess long-winded way of saying, uh, what is it about checklists and flowcharts that translate into a better financial relationship with clients? And I think you've touched on it a little bit, but to me, it feels like there's a deepening of the relationship here because I certainly feel a connection to my cardiologist, and I think the doctors that you're describing feel the same. What is it about that helps the relationship?
Well, okay, that's kind of moving into this
Yeah.
other aspect here where this helps create it helps to show that the value that advisors are
Mm,
providing. So you go back earlier on, you had mentioned about advisors that just show up to a client meeting and they're like, "Here's
yeah.
account performance. What's on your mind?" Okay, so that's kind of reactive. What's the value you as the advisor are bringing to that relationship? And what happens when you don't do that? Like you start to
Mm,
worry. Are you providing enough value? Is somebody else going to come in? Am I going to get left behind? Are they going to leave
yeah.
at some point? So the theme that we keep seeing, and I talk about this and write about this a lot, is how can we keep providing more value? And it doesn't have to be complex technical things, but just saying what are the right things to talk with our
Right.
client about at the right time, that provides value. And so if you get a week before you get an email from a client, or sorry, you're getting, you as the advisor send this
Yeah.
email out and saying, hey, go through this checklist, and it prompts the advisor or the client to say, oh, you know what, I'm thinking about buying that house. I'm glad that I wasn't actually going to mention that because I'm pretty much
Yeah.
locked in on it, but now that you're mentioning it, I am doing this. Because what we see is that an advisor that just comes in and says, hey, what's on your mind? They might not actually, the client may not know to raise all of
Right.
those different issues that are actually going to have a really big impact on their financial plan. Or that, like stones that we should be unturning don't actually get unturned because we don't know about
It's it's really interesting. I've often said that there's very few financial advisor emergencies, so it's a relatively low stress job in that respect, right? That you're not going to have the panic call too often that needs emergency action occasionally, right? So somebody's buying a house, or
it.
getting a
Right.
divorce or whatever, and suddenly it's just the bleep has hit the fan, and I need money now or whatever. As a general rule, it doesn't happen for financial advisors all too often, and as a result, I think it can be easy to get lulled into like, I need to talk to my client, have a meeting with them twice a year, and it's a little checkup on the portfolio and so forth and the financial plan, and then off we go. But I think what you're getting at is like, a lot of life stuff happens in between meetings. Like a lot of active, financially
Yeah.
consequential things happen in between the meeting, right? So, uh, yeah, to your point, they may have seen like that house that they've always wanted to buy in that mountain community, beach community, whatever, that vacation house finally popped on the market. And the first thing that enters a client's mind isn't, who I need to call? I need to call Michael, my financial advisor, and make sure that I run this by him. They're like, no, 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 quick, let's go do this, right? And so having frequent reach outs to your client to ask questions is really helpful.
Right. When we were piloting the
Yeah.
checklists internally, uh, we had a version of them that was written out, and I was working on it, and I got a phone call from a client, and they're saying, "My father just
Mm,
passed away. What do I do?" And it was kind of like this aha moment because I'm like, I have the
yeah,
checklist right here. Like nobody else has seen this, so I'm able to go through and ask the questions. And then we started asking around, like, well, what do other advisors do when they get that call, that panic call? Like sometimes, in some cases, like a death, you might be one of the first
true.
calls
Yeah.
they make. And like, what do you do?
Mm.
What we found is that advisors they're frantically searching on Google for
True.
guidance. Like,
Probably true.
what do I
Yeah.
do? Yeah, what do I do? Because what else are you going to do? And like the rules keep changing. So maybe the last time a client passed away for you was like before the Secure Act came out, before all these
Yeah.
beneficiary changes were getting rolled out. So it's like the conversations are changing, and you might be a little
Yeah.
rusty, right? So it gives you a little bit
Yeah.
more confidence.
So going back to those checklists, right? It sounds like there could also be variations of the checklist. Okay. You get a phone call about a death. Who's died? Is it a client who's passed away? So husband has died, wife has
Right,
died, or whatever. Or okay, great. Or is it their children calling you to say, by the way, my dad, your client,
right.
is now deceased. I'm now going to be taking over their finances.
Yep.
Or is it a call from your client going, hey, my dad has passed away. You don't manage his money. I don't know what to do. I
But I
need
need help.
direction here.
Right.
So, do you have variations of the checklist?
Yes. Yeah. So we have them for all life events, and then we have them like there's versions of those. So for us, yeah, there's one where like my parent passed away. What do I do? Like one parent passed away because there's a interesting planning issues that come up there. What happens if my spouse passes away? What happens if my spouse is terminally
Mm.
ill? Right. So those three questions, they are kind of those checklists, those cover what you're all the cases that you're raising over there and how to suss out those planning issues that come up.
It sounds like to bring it up to like a 30,000 foot level out of just this one specific um, life event of death. It's anticipating some preparedness that these situations are going to happen. So, if you're a young advisor, let's just say you're 40 years old, and as a general rule, most advisors' client pool is around a 10-year circle around their age, right? So they have
Right.
some clients who are maybe, close to 50, and some clients are probably close to 30. But as a general rule, there's a circle there, right? They're not probably managing that many clients who are 75 years old or what have you. They may not be thinking deaths and those types of things with their current client pool because it's relatively young and they may not have experienced it yet. They may not have experienced divorce of a couple that of assets they manage. But what you're
Right.
saying as I'm hearing this is be prepared. These things are going to happen in your client roster. Absolutely, assuredly at some point in time.
It Yes, I think there's a nuance to this though, and it goes back to
Mm,
value. So an advisor starts working with the client, they go through that whole onboarding stage, whatever that looks like for
yeah.
the advisor, and they build out the
Yeah.
financial plan. Okay. They reach that big milestone and then they execute that plan, right? What happens after
Yeah.
that in the client relationship? How does the advisor keep showing value? Covering life events is that's a great one. But it's not where more and more of our advisors are using us is how do we just keep uncovering other planning issues. It's a productivity aspect. It's not necessarily like we save you a lot of time. It's within the same amount of time, you're going to uncover more stuff and
Mm.
you're going to provide more value to your clients.
Makes sense.
So it's like it's a broader it's a broader thing. Like the younger advisors, they're going through, like, there's career changes, they're having children,
Right.
buying houses, uh, but what's happening? Like, are we looking at insurance enough? What's happening there? Or obviously we look at investments, but it's it's these ongoing conversations to try to provide more value to the client and do so in a systematic way. That's what we're
Yeah.
able to solve for.
So let's dive into that in a little more deeper because in the email that Erin from your team sent over to explore having you join me on an episode of the show,
Yeah.
she shared a link to a blog post that you wrote on Michael Kitzis's blog, in which you outlined 4 core areas to motivate clients to be more active in the financial process, which is exactly what you were just talking about, like about continuing this
Right.
process. This is not a one and done point in time type thing. This is an ongoing process. Now, in the blog post, you frame these areas as active engagement strategies, or excuse me, advice engagement strategies. Um,
Yeah.
we'll get that post linked up. By the way, it is fairly long and comprehensive, so grab a cup of coffee if you want to read that. But I wonder if you could summarize the 4 core areas of the planning process to give some sense of why having an advice engagement strategy is so powerful.
Yeah. Okay. So just for a second, taking that step back, advice engagement is everything that I
Yeah.
was just talking about. It's what happens after the financial plan. It kind of like the the aha moment for me, the genesis was in part hearing about a conversation where an advisor was talking to another advisor, and they were both complaining. I think that's the right word, about clients that they didn't think were
Hmm.
good clients. And so they're saying, well, what makes them not a good client? And the other person answered, they don't take my advice. They don't follow up on my emails enough. And that became the interesting aspect there, because that wasn't necessarily that there's something wrong with the client. That means they were disengaged with the process. And so within financial planning, there's a bunch of different ways that you could look at this, but uh, and I cover a lot of that in the article. But in essence, it's how do we get more engaged in providing advice? How do we sell the advice? Not sell to get a new client, but how do we sell that the recommendation? And so we kind of go into different areas that advisors can consider. And some of that is, how do I teach you? How do I educate you about the benefits of this strategy? When you go to the dentist or go to a doctor, they will they give you a recommendation, do this, and they're handing you
Right.
some literature. All right. There's psychological reasons why they actually give you that when you could just go back and just as easily Google it. Right. There's something there. There's a lot of research around that and why they do it. There's something too about the fact finding that's really important. So when you go to if you're a client, you go to an advisor and they say, complete this giant like intake form to
Yeah.
become a client. That's intimidating, right? And so all of a sudden, like, wait, I got to fill this thing out. You want all my statements? Like, I don't have time for this. And so if you can shorten that and get that fact finding stage really short, that helps. And those are 2 big areas. But then there's other aspects of just how do we stay on top of the advice and the recommendations, and literally how is that advice
Yeah.
delivered? Is do we pick up the phone, call the client? Do we have to sit down? What's that material that we send? Not to educate on the benefit of the strategy, but to show the recommendation itself. And the article, it really covers what's happening in the advisor tech landscape, because on the Kitsis fintech map, like, there's a new category there, and it's all advice
Hmm.
engagement. And there's really cool pieces of software that are coming out that are making that a lot more accessible than ever before. It's like, how, in the past, how do you analyze a tax return? It was like prohibitive. It took so much time for an advisor to do that. Now you have Holistiplan. You can upload the tax return. You get this amazing report that you can give to the client. It helps to uncover planning issues right there in that report.
That's it. I love this notion of the advice engagement because it, anyone in any other industry could also relate to this, right? Like, you could be a personal trainer and see your client once a week and talk about the workouts you're going to do. And if they don't follow up on the workouts, your doctor can give you all sorts of advice in terms about adjusting your diet and upping your exercise routine. And if you don't follow up with it, it's great that they gave you the advice, but the advice has to actually be followed. To your point, the frustration of advisors, I'm sure everywhere where they've given the client advice. Now, some of it's relatively easy to implement. Like, okay, let's adjust your 401k contribution to whatever percent of your salary. But
Right.
other ongoing stuff can be difficult to make sure that it's happening. So having ongoing engagement is super smart.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole other aspect too in that article about how folks show up as being
Mhm.
disengaged. Like, there's an aspect too where people calling up in a hurry, in a panic, because they forgot to make an end of year contribution, and now it's like they've only got a little bit of time, even though they
Yeah.
knew about it for 3 or 4 months. Like, that's a form of disengaged because it was like on the back burner for a long time, and now it's a high priority. Uh, and so it goes down, like there's different ways of looking at how those clients actually show up, and from there, there's other articles that I've done in the past that go into how to approach that. There's different strategies to accommodate that or to try to prevent the the diseng- how that disengagement shows up in an
Yeah.
advisor's business.
I want to tackle one thing that I imagine might be rattling around in some advisors' heads as they're thinking about having their clients be more engaged in this way and
Right.
almost giving their clients homework to do as it feels. Because one thing that jumps out to me uh, is there might be a delicate balance, right? Of the I'll do it for you, which I think is somewhat at the core of the relationship that many advisors have with their clients. Like, I will manage your money for you. I'll manage your investments for you.
Hmm.
I will give you a financial plan that's easy to follow. I will guide you towards setting these goals. And if we do these steps, contributions, and invest this way, we're going to get there. If you have this type of insurance that we're going to get you, you'll be protected from these risks, right? Um, but it does feel like there's a little bit of a shift, not all the way to the DIY, do it yourself type of continuum, but it does feel like we're nudging clients a little bit over there. Um, have you had pushback from advisors who are worried about this, or how do you guide them into understanding that this is best for their business and best for their clients?
Right. So that's there are some advisors that will, like, we offer three different
Okay.
membership levels for our software, and there are a group of advisors that I think that you articulate that well for. They want this as an internal tool.
Hmm.
It's just a support tool. Clients will never know that there's a checklist or flowchart. Then there's a group where uh, they're putting this in front of their clients and they're saying, look, retirement's complicated. This is the checklist. These are a lot of the issues we're going to look at, but this is our map. I'm going to be your guide. I'm going to walk you through this journey together, and let's get started. Right. So it's really like a map guide taking the client on a journey kind of experience. Uh, in terms of actually shifting this over, it's we're asking more questions. That's the key part here. We will let's get into the in the mindset of asking our clients more questions so we can uncover planning
Right.
opportunities. We're not actually suggesting, these guides don't actually make the recommendations. They don't supplement what's going on. Much like a pilot that flies an airplane who's using a checklist, you can't hand that checklist off to the passengers and they are able to fly the plane.
Yeah, good
It's
point.
it's it's a support tool, and for some advisors, that support tool they want to put it in front of their clients and incorporate that into their process a bit more.
Love it. It's interesting to me. It struck me as you started to describe that is, and you talked about like there's different processes. Like some advisors will, have the checklist. The clients don't know they have the checklist, and they're going to keep it to themselves. And then others who are going to be at the opposite end of the spectrum of like being very engaged with the clients. It strikes me that like an advisor could have both of those plans depending upon the client, because some clients, we've all had them, like people you work with who they're very much involved in everything you're doing. They're asking lots of questions. They're sending suggestions. They need to know, like they're just the way their brain is wired is like they need to know what's happening all over the place. Whereas there are some clients who are like, "Yep, here you go. That's why I hired you. Now I'm going to go play golf, or I got to go do my work, the thing that makes the money that you're managing for me. I'm busy with that type of stuff." It's nice to have the tools, right? Like it sounds to me like this framework is and the tools, the checklists and the flowcharts are stuff that can aid those clients who might be a little more needy, or not needy is not the right word, but you know what I'm saying, like action
Yes,
oriented.
it's the
Yeah,
level of engage. That's the point. They're on this other end of
yeah,
the engagement side, and sometimes they can be over engaged. They want to be so involved that they're
yeah,
calling you up all the time. So how do you help that, right? Um, there's this case where an advisor, it was in September, they sent out an email to all of their clients, and they said, right now we're looking at doing Roth conversions right now. We want to look at them now so we can do them before the end of the year. Here's all the cool reasons why you should consider a Roth conversion. Now let's see if you're
yeah,
eligible. Open up this flow chart, walk through this flow chart, and if you get to the end over here and it suggests you are eligible to do one, give please schedule a time
yeah,
so we can talk. So in that case, he's actually screening his clients to find out who's interested and who's eligible. And what he found was there were some clients that he would never have guessed would have wanted to do a Roth conversion. Like wouldn't have even bothered
yeah,
to reach out to them. But something changed in their life. And all of a sudden they wanted to do that. And so and then because he went through like a screening aspect, there were some clients where they they wanted to,
yeah.
but they can't. But it opened up the door for different kinds of conversations. And for him, he's like, that's it. I need one flow chart. As long as you guys keep it up to date, which we do, I'm going to just use that, and I'm going to be a happy camper.
That's yeah. You just answered a funny question that like I'm not sure if we tackled in all of our half an hour or so of talking so far. You keep it up to date, the flow chart, the checklist, right? So, it's great to recommend these things to somebody like, hey, you should have a checklist of things that need to be done, or a flow chart of like, how do I handle estate planning based on a client's whatever their situation is, and walk them through the process. You're actually keeping this up to date with what is changing in the landscape for a financial advisor and their clients, right? Versus them having to remember what are
Exactly. Right.
the Rosh conversion rules, what are the contribution limits, and so on and so forth. Very important stuff.
Yeah, and that's where it becomes a challenge because those rules keep
Yeah,
changing.
absolutely. Yeah, it can make your head spin. I hate to. I think any advisor who's listening or watching this episode is like, yeah, this stuff does make your head spin occasionally. You just like, and I think that's the reason why. By the way, some advisors see the value of getting into financial planning, as an example, or offering insurance, or offering some form of tax planning in their business. But as soon as they start to dip their toe in, they get a little like, oh my God, my head is spinning here, man. Like there's
Right.
so much
Right.
stuff. I'm good at this other thing. I've been doing that for 25, 30 years. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, or whatever. Even though I know
Yeah.
my business may have some risk in it if I'm not starting to add these other services.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point. And there's actually this theme that we've been seeing where the whole concept of the annual client review
Yeah.
meeting is starting to change a bit, where they're looking for more advisors are looking for more ways to bring value to a client outside of that annual meeting or the
Yeah.
biannual meeting, like whatever it is, like how like looking for more excuses to reach out with actual like here's value, not just hey, how's everything going? I just looked at your performance. I just checked beneficiaries. Like
Yeah.
everything looks great. I just looked at your Monte Carlo simulation. Like you're good. But it's like, hey, it's been a couple of years since we've gone through estate planning. Like we should talk. Like take a look at this checklist. Like go through the
Yeah.
system here. And uh, that doesn't mean that they have to be the
Yeah.
technical expert. But it's like, okay, hey, we see something here. Like, okay, I think we should refer you off to an attorney over here. Let's talk to them or go off to a CPA. It's not about them necessarily having to be the expert in tax and estate planning, but being able to uncover the issue enough to be able to say, this is something, but these other people, they're going to do the work. Like that's a big aspect that we see as well.
100%. And it's so funny you mentioned that. You talked about you mentioned Holistiplan earlier, right, in the show, as like a solution that can help advisors who might not have thought that tax planning and tax strategies could be a piece of their business, understanding your client tax returns. And I've had a founder of Holistiplan, and I'm blanking on his name at the moment. If you have it,
Uh,
right? Yeah,
Roger, Kevin.
I think it was Roger. Yes, Roger Klein, Pine, yeah, whatever. Anyway, I'll get it. You know, I tell you what, you will see a picture of that episode in this episode when we finish it. I'll have it linked up. Anyway, I'm sorry, Roger, if I'm forgetting your last name. Anyway, the whole point of this, what I was,
It's fine.
anyway, the whole point of this is, no, we are in a new era, right? Where I think your clients don't expect you to have all the answers, right? Coming at them with recommendations for their investments and your ability to manage those investments is awesome. But it's also cool that you come at them with recommendations for tax planning, for estate planning, and you may not be the one who renders the services. You may partner with another organization that does that or leverage a technology that does it. But it's really uh, smart for you to do that because what you really want is the relationship, right? You want the comprehensive relationship with your clients and you want them relying on you to help them achieve their life goals. Couple of things I want to cover. And the first one is it feels to me like a teeny bit of an elephant in the room, right? Or at least it felt that way to me as I started to process this and I started to think about the nature of the client roster that most advisors aspire to have or already have is that, on this podcast and others that we produce, we spend a lot of time talking about how advisors can best use their time, that their time is valuable.
Mhm.
And many of the advisors that are watching or listening today, they're making 500,000, million plus a year, believe it or not. They're top producers if they're in an IBD or a wirehouse firm, or they own an RIA and they're doing really well. So they realize their time is valuable. There's only so much time that they can have and invest. And I suspect their clients feel the same way, right? The reason why I've come to you, Michael, to manage
Mhm.
my assets as a high net worth individual or as an ultra high net worth individual is my time is really valuable. I don't have time to think about all these, managing these portfolios and so forth. I want you to do it and I want to have some structured conversations around it. So I suspect there's a little bit of nervousness about coordinating the things you're talking about doing, right? The jobs to be done stuff with their high net worth and ultra high net worth clients. So do you have recommendations for managing that process, right? Should the advisor work with their assistants? I mean, heck, when we talk to advisors, that's one of the things they often say is like, can my assistant do it? Because I don't want to do that stuff. Do you have like kind of some communications recommendations for facilitating?
Yeah. So when the way we've seen, especially larger, well, adv- advisory firms that are growing, where there's
Mhm.
maybe some people like if this advisor, if he's gotten to the point where he has like advisors that are working
Mhm.
for him or her, uh, there's a training aspect. There's also just a consistency of advice aspect too. So we see firms coming to us saying, look, I like what you guys are doing, and I want all the advisors that I work with to be asking these kinds of questions
Yeah.
to their client, to our clients. And so in that case, it's just like a let's level set the quality of advice and the quality of the conversations we're having across the board. So whether the client is working with advisor A or advisor B, they should still uncover the same
Yeah.
planning issues. So then there comes down to this other aspect, the jobs to be done. Now this goes down to like a high net worth individual as the client or ultra high net worth. The reason they might be coming to you is different than somebody
Mm,
else. And so what they're valuing, the job they want you as the advisor to do may be different than
right.
somebody else, like somebody with like a mass affluent kind of person. And so there it's more about how do you set up your services? What are the values that you're trying to provide? And there's this came out, I don't know, I'm going to say like 10 years ago, Harvard Business Review came out with this article where it was the elements of value framework. And if you just search for elements of value HBR, it comes up. And it's a triangle showing the all of the different aspects of value that businesses can provide to consumers. And when you look into it, it very clearly you can apply a lot of the principles that you see there to what we as advisors do for clients. And an advisor might, with some clients, maybe those clients they just want
Yeah.
to save time. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to know like all the ins and outs. Just take care of it. All right. So the reason they're hiring the advisor is to
Yeah.
save time. Okay. So they're buying their time. That's what they're doing. But as they move up, it might not be that case. It could be heirloom aspects. Like I want this stuff, all this hard work. I want to turn this into an heirloom. I'm hiring you to take this wealth and get it down to the next generations appropriately. I need help on that front. Or maybe it's just like in terms of like I need access to different investments, right
Right.
people, the right introductions because I'm a small business owner and I want to be able to sell my business and I hear you're the right person. So within a lot of those, there are checklists and flowcharts that can help with uncovering some of that. But if you step back, really a lot of that is just how do you frame how do we as advisors package up the value that we're providing to clients, but packaging it up in a way where the client is going, yes, that's what I
Right.
need help with. You know, I don't need to just like avoid. I'm not looking for you to help me avoid probate and like how like the beneficiary designations. Like that's what some people want. Others are like, no, because I want my kids, my grandkids to have this amazing college education, and my gift to them is this. Two different ways of pitching that and
Yeah.
talking about that.
Tell you what, by the way, sounds like you could have a checklist on that. When you start talking to the new ultra high net worth client, here are the things you want to ask them, right? You're like,
Right.
hey, what type of engagement do you want to have? We talk about, and I know this probably already exists in the process, but like, when you think about, the legacy you want to have, what does it look like and what does it look like for those heirs?
So there's actually we have a checklist, and this is a whole interesting aspect. Uh, Research came out a couple of years ago that talked about goals and how do you define goals. And the research basically found out that if you walk in and you ask your client, what's your top financial goal? You're going to get a couple of answers. All right, you're going to get one or two
Yeah.
answers typically. If you present them the list of possible goals to pick from, akin to you going to a restaurant and the waits have handed you the menu, you get to look through the goals you pick off of when you see like possible goals, radically different. Like if I just ask you what your financial planning goal is, your top one, you're going to give me one answer. And if I give you this, most likely you're going to change your answer. So we have a flow chart or a checklist out there that's just goals considerations. And so we've got advisors that are using this early on with new clients, but also throughout the whole planning process of saying, okay, it's been a couple of years. Let's revisit this conversation about what's most important to you. And then you might see the conversation change. It's like actually investment stability, not as important now because I want actually to take more risk because I want this money to go to the next generation. And the goal changes.
That's really smart. Number one, I think most financial consumers aren't aware of all the possible financial goals. I mean, part of the reason why, even if they are ultra high net worth individual, that they're part of the reason why they're sitting across the table from you is they have a level of discomfort with the financial planning process, right? They don't know the things they don't know. They're
Right.
coming to you for your expertise, for your guidance, right? So your wisdom, because you've walked down this path with a lot of different clients and you've studied this concept. So it makes sense that they would have a different idea of what's possible because they don't know than if you gave them all of the possibilities or all of the areas of interest that might be there for them, right? It's kind of like when a kid goes off to college. I've got one who's going to college here in a couple of months. You know, he's got a
Oh boy.
mindset of what he wants to study, what his major is, and I think he's got a good direction there. But I will not be surprised if he changes because why? He's going to be exposed to there was other stuff that I could consider
Right.
studying. Like
Yeah.
maybe that's a new thing. So I think it's a really smart idea to present your clients with that wider range of possibilities, the menu as you described it. So we're getting close to the end here, and I wanted to bring it on home with a quick chat about what you've termed micro engagements, because I think as with a lot of these transformational solutions, advisors and clients, but I think primarily advisors can feel a little nervous about jumping in the pool in the deep end, right? They just think, oh God, this is going to be a lot of
Yeah.
work. As we talked about, sometimes your head spins when you think about making a big change or adding something to your business. So I love the notion of micro engagements as maybe a way to dip their toes in, right? So why don't we spend a little bit of time there? Talk about the value of micro engagements, maybe even define it first, and then talk about the value of like how an advisor can
Sure.
kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah. All right. So we started to touch upon this, but it kind of taps into this pain point or this concern with advisors wondering, are they providing enough value
Mm,
to their clients? And it and kind of going down to like a deeper path, it's that conversation or that fear that that clients are thinking about. uh, I pay my advisor a lot of money, but in between the times when I'm actually sitting across the table working with them, what value
yeah,
are they providing? And so there's the thought has kind of been evolving. At some points of time, it was like, how do we show them all the shadow
yeah,
work that we do, newsletters and things like that, or just communicating it? And there's this meaningful shift that we're seeing among advisors where they're saying, we're going to actually provide more value. And it maybe this is like brought on a little bit because we're seeing like this monthly subscription model for
yeah,
financial planning take more traction. And so now the client, they're seeing it like in some cases come out of their
yeah,
like show up on a credit card statement, like financial planning fee. They're going, I paid $300 this month. What
right,
did I get? And for some advisors, and this is where I think it's starting to go, they're going, I want to provide value on a regular basis, but I can't meet with my clients all the time. So how can I break this up into
right,
smaller chunks? And so you go back to, or I go back to this example about this advisor that sent out an email to their clients and saying, I'm looking at Roth conversions in September. We're going to just focus on that. Well, that's a
yeah,
micro engagement. We're still doing the annual client review meeting. We're still doing all that, but we're going to just focus and get really specific. So it helps for the advisor to be a little bit more efficient because they're able to have the exact same conversation with the client, one after the other, in like a month or 2 month period of time. And so they're mentally like they're in the zone of like, how do I talk about this? How do I analyze this? And some advisors are taking that and they're adding multiple touch points throughout the year. And I remember the first time I talked to an advisor that was doing this, I was like, so how do you do your business? How do you structure it? And he goes, I send 4 emails to clients a year.
hmm,
I was like, well, what does that? What do you mean by that? He goes, okay, I send all of my clients an email in January saying we're going to look at taxes for the first quarter. I don't want to talk with you about anything else other than
okay,
taxes. And then at the start of the next quarter, so like right after, I guess right after taxes are done, so like mid April, he's sending another email out going, I'm just going to look at investments and cash flow for the next 3 months. If this is interesting, if this is something you want to cover, or talk about, reach out to me. I'm going to be doing the work anyway. But if you want to talk about it, that's what we're talking about. And then the third quarter, it alternated. It was estate planning one year, like looking at beneficiaries, and then it was insurance reviews. Was like they
Yeah.
flipped each year. And then the end of year, it was just end of year
Yeah.
planning opportunities. So he found he didn't have an annual client review meeting. He sent out 4 emails a year saying, I'm inviting you to reach out to me and we can talk about things that are on your mind over here. I'm still doing the work, but this is what I'm focused on at this time.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. By the way, you could make a nice little checklist / flowchart for that for your people as well. Here's some emails you should be sending or contacts you should be sending out based on month and client situation or whatever.
Oh yeah. So that if you zoom out, that the concept there is called the client service calendar. And we have that. We've got versions. We've got the letters to introduce all of that. And if you go onto the website, we make all that readily available, just so folks can get a sense of how to introduce that to your
Absolutely
clients.
fantastic. Well, Michael, all of this has been really good stuff. I love the fact that we kind of closed with some actionable stuff, right? And then I hope that encourages people to visit the website, fppathfinder.com, explore more. I've spent quite a bit of time on there, tinkering around and so forth, just looking around. I think there's a lot of value there. I completely get it. Like, again, as somebody who probably should use more checklists in his life, absolutely see value. It'd be great stuff. All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for listening to and or watching this episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Michael's awesome, man. What a really innovative solution. And at its root, simple, but it makes sense. Have updated guides, have the answers at your fingertips. Don't tell your clients you're like, I'll get back to you. Be like, okay, as we're talking, as you're asking me questions, I've got a place to go. Or if we have a routine meeting, let's make sure I asked all the right stuff, right? Love it, love it, love it. Okay, before I let you go, if you haven't done so already, please do make sure you subscribe to the podcast or subscribe to the video show over on YouTube, wherever you like to hang out. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, again, the YouTubes, wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. And if you have a question or a suggestion for a topic or a guest for the show, hit me up. You can either find me, I'm at Mike Langford pretty much everywhere, or just do the podcast at finservmarketing.com. Is that what it is? Or is it MFA? I don't know. You find it. It's on the show. Real easy to find. Okay. We'll see you next time on the Financial Advisor Podcast. See ya. Bye.